been a long overdue seminar. I've been really waiting for it and looking forward to it. Initially, there was a plan to come and obviously visit you up in North London, but yeah, we'll do it the way we can do it. And actually, this mode, of course, makes it possible for more people to attend. Let's see it as an advantage. Anyway, thank you very much again for inviting me. I'd like to say, of course, it is that this title is a slightly provocative title, the kind of how-to, the self-help, the sort of answer to all questions. Of course, there is no such thing as answering all questions. There's no such thing as knowing exactly how to build a sustainable academic career. What I'm going to talk about today is I don't think anything I'm going to say is particularly the sort of thing you have never heard before. This is not based on some original research. It's based on the school of life, really, the school of academic life, both my own and those colleagues who have shared over the years different reflections with me and different observations. I hope that more than anything else, this is a good opportunity for all of us to collectively discuss some of these issues, to collectively reflect on them, and then perhaps, hopefully, there are some connections being made between certain things which are obvious probably at the point when they are explicitly stated, but these are not necessarily things that we all think about all the time. These are not things we all bear in mind all the time. That it's really, really important to consider our career development and planning in the context of personal well-being and sustainability. And when I say career development planning, it's not just always about progression. It's not always about our next promotion. Some of us here in this room right now, the Zoom room, are early career researchers. Some of us are not at all, but it doesn't mean our careers are not developing. Time is passing and we are in different places every month, every year. And it's important, I think, always to think about what is happening in our professional lives and our organizational lives from the perspective of personal well-being and sustainability. For those of us who are perhaps early career researchers or would like to reflect on the sort of things that are going on in our direct environment, I'd like to say a few things as well about the specificity of career progression in the UK higher education context. Then I've prepared something that I have called a sustainability check, again, in line with that whole self-help ethos of how to build a career. I think it's good to have a sustainability check as well for ourselves. But then seriously, I'd like to speak a little bit about certain common challenges. And it's not going to be an exhaustive list. It's going to be, again, a little bit of provocation, a little bit of suggestion for you to think about. These are the challenges you have faced, you may face, you recognize. And then I will try to convince you that there is such a thing as very practical, specific strategies and tactics for building an academic career in a sustainable way. So starting with the first idea of why is it so important to think about our careers in terms of personal well-being and sustainability? As we know, and that's something that we say quite often, is most of us are genuinely passionate about our work. This is not the sort of work we do because we really, had lots of different ideas, didn't really want to go into academia, but we ended up in academia. Usually it is quite a specific, quite a deliberate choice that we make in life, and we spend years training to become an academic. It's not an obvious immediate field to enter. So we are genuinely passionate about our work. We are very often passionate about our students, being good educators, passionate about our research. We identify with the academic ethos. We identify with ideas of social justice, making the world a better place. All of these things tap into a particular ethic of a person who then decides to become an academic. Then we become academics, and we often find ourselves that we're in 24/7 cultures of overwork, overcommitment. Things are not at all straightforward, easy to do, and we can get overwhelmed. Then we sometimes forget that our work is very, very important to us. Of course it is, but there is more to life than work. And this is a place I've been in, and I'm sure many of you have been in. Perhaps some of you are in that place right now, that work becomes all-consuming, and we do forget, or we don't even consider that actually this fills all our time, but we are more than academics, we are human beings as well, and we keep going and going and going, morning, noon and night, and over the weekends as well, because there is always more to be done, and we're not really worried about it because we are very resilient people. Very resilient people, we've always been resilient, we've never had problems. And the thing is, well, actually, we cannot take resilience for granted throughout our lifespan. Things can happen to everybody. We only have one body, one mind, one body mind. Things like depression, burnout, physical illness, autoimmune disease, all manner of things that we work hard for, in addition to working hard to get our next promotion, they are very, very real. And we tend to not always remember about them. And especially, I can think about this as an early career researcher. When I was doing my PhD, I was also working full time. I was doing a PhD part time. I was working 9 to 5, then I was working on my PhD 5 to 9, then I didn't have holidays for 5 years, and ended up just being very, very exhausted. And that wasn't a great start to an academic career, really. And there is also something to think about in terms of sustainability, because in academia, the way things go right now with the pensions crisis, for example, with the way the economy is, we have to think that we're likely to be in academia, depending obviously, on when somebody started, but for 40 years, maybe even longer. So we've got to pace ourselves. We need to plan well, because mistakes can be costly. And again, we have one body, one mind, one life only. I've come up with a list of certain goals. I think we all try to achieve so many different goals. Have a moment to, please take a moment to read them. And now you can see where they look. That one says generating impact on society and business. And this one coming up with new research ideas. All the other ones you should be able to see without a problem. Okay, these are the goals. Perhaps there are more goals. I would be very interested to find out whether you think you are actually working on other goals as well. So I wanted to invite you to take a moment to reflect which of these are your top 5 objectives at this very, very moment. We always work on more than one. And how do you think you're getting on with meeting them? Yes, but yeah, maybe take a moment just to yourselves and think about what your top 5 would be. I first thought top 3. I thought, no, nobody has just top 3. We all have at least 5 at any given time. So no wonder that if we are constantly trying to meet those different goals, and I think that those things which were on that list are fairly obvious things, fairly obvious. They are not some kind of sophisticated, difficult to find things that or goals that we are pursuing, and not even going down to very specific activities that we need to engage in order to pursue those goals successfully. Well, it doesn't surprise at all that we do actually get overwhelmed, even if not now, even if not yesterday. This sense of being overwhelmed, the sense of sort of losing the ability to keep going in the same way is always just around the corner. And that's why it's really, really important to have that sense of that realization, awareness of the importance of our sustainability and well-being always in mind. So this again is something that's obviously not at all original. We know more or less what well-being is. The most basic definition just says well-being is about how we are doing. Are we feeling well, are we not? And obviously the notion of well-being, and I know some of you here actually study well-being, you research well-being, it can be considered at the level of individuals, communities, at the whole society. And there is something about the notion of well-being which also has a future orientation. It's about how sustainable this is for the future. And there are different dimensions to well-being. And I think that is really, really important to remember when we think about our careers, our work, our professional activities, and our well-being, to bear in mind that career or work, this is what happens every day in work, working relationships, how we work, what our working conditions are, they are very important to our well-being. However, there is more to well-being than just our work. Work can have both a very positive impact on our well-being, but it can also have very detrimental impact on our well-being. Doing other things while working can contribute to our well-being. Not doing those things while doing the same things at work can actually have a negative effect on our well-being. So I really wanted to stress the importance of realizing that there is the career and there is a lot of satisfaction we all gain from work, but work itself in its own right will not be enough for the sense of well-being and sustainability. Because personal well-being refers to how satisfied we are with our lives in generally. We need to feel that what we do in life is worthwhile. And I think that's a trap that we as academics quite often fall into because well, I very much believe in it, at least is that what we do in our professional work is very worthwhile. So that gives us sometimes, I think, the false sense of security that, oh yeah, our work is really leading us to well-being because we're doing such important, worthwhile things. However, there are also those day-to-day emotional experiences, and those include both positive experiences that lead to happiness, but also anxiety. And we have to admit our work can be a source of great anxieties to us, and often is. So it's not surprising that work and career have a significant impact on our personal well-being, and I'm not saying anything original here, but I think what is quite really important and deserves some attention is that this relationship is not straightforward. It is a complex, multidimensional relationship. Now why? So why is sustainability so important within this, right? So well-being being one thing, sustainability being another. Because if we want to perform at a high level all the time, longer term, and I see I'm here in the background that this lady who's photographed, this is the photograph of a person who's burned out. If we want our performance to be high and sustainable, so if we want as academics to be able to meet all those goals which we set for ourselves, we need to be able to effectively manage our stress, and the stress shouldn't be chronic. We cannot keep going feeling anxious, feeling stressed out, feeling a bit exhausted, whether emotionally or physically or both, all the time. And burnout is a very real and significant consequence of chronic and unmanaged stress. And in the UK, and especially in academia, burnout, anxiety, depression are very, very real things, very real things. Some of you might have been there again, might know you've been there. Some of us actually experience those mini burnouts where we don't even realize we keep going throughout the burnout and beyond. Or we operate sometimes just at the edge, just somewhere on the border between, am I too exhausted? Am I too cynical to continue, or just enough? But it's not functioning at a sort of really, first of all, at a really high level of effectiveness, but also it's not a satisfying, it's not a rewarding way to be at work, and not a rewarding way to be in life. And also, of course, burnout leads to poor health longer term. So it's really important not to get ourselves to that stage. I've given here some statistics for last year. Apparently in the UK alone, nearly 13 million working days were lost due to work-related stress, depression, and anxiety. So first the good news about what it's like to build careers in the UK academic context, what it is like for us as business school scholars to be in this context, because as I said, well, I just said a moment ago that that burnout, of course, is so real and is so sometimes difficult to avoid. But on the other hand, there is a lot we can do working in UK academia, and especially being business school scholars. So the good news, I think, for a lot of us, and a lot of us have benefited from it, is that since really not long after the post-war period, business and management education in the UK has been consistently growing. And there are many opportunities for both job entry and career progression for business school academics. Let's not forget this, because there are some disciplines in which people do their PhDs, people are passionate about their subject area, they would like to work there, but the discipline is shrinking, not shrinking because of the intellectual base shrinking, it's shrinking because not many students are attracted to study those degrees, and therefore there are not many new jobs for academics. I think this is very good news for those of us who are building careers in UK academia, is that there are chances for job entry and career progression. On the other hand, business schools very often are seen to be the ones responsible for generating income for their universities. So yes, we do get jobs as business school academics. However, we often then face really high workloads because we're expected to then generate income for the rest of the university, including those disciplines which are struggling to attract students. Well, that means that compared to other departments, as business schools academics, we sometimes have a more limited influence really on the content of our work. For example, in terms of what we are expected to teach, what we are expected to do in day-to-day work of, say, managing programs, various responsibilities, and that leads to a probably greater risk of burning out. This is just speculative on my part. I haven't seen statistics showing how much burnout, for example, business schools academics are suffering compared to other academics, and that would be worth checking. But thinking about how overloaded we all are, overworked we often are in academia, I think there's something to be said about a special place here of business school academics in that context. Now, that's something that, again, people tend to know, but actually we don't always reflect on this. Depending on where we want to progress with our careers, where we want to build our career, sometimes we find ourselves in a particular business school simply because this is where job has been available. There are different types of universities and different types of business schools in the UK, and they have different emphasis. I must say, the first time when I started a job as a business school lecturer, and that was 2001 at the University of Northumbria in Newcastle, nearly 20 years ago, I had, back then, I had absolutely no idea about the system of rankings, the system of divisions within the UK academic context. I had no idea that there were pre-92 universities, post-92 universities, Russell Group universities, teaching-oriented, research-oriented, both-oriented. I had no idea. I really wanted an academic job. I applied for an academic job. And of course, the UK system has got this specificity about it, which is that there is a lot that you can find out about an institution in advance based on exactly knowing that broader context, right? There is a lot of structure, a lot of clarity, I believe, compared to some other systems, which can be more opaque. This is what I believe based on my experience and my experience of speaking with colleagues and knowing people working in other systems. We do have in the UK clear promotion and probation criteria, well-defined ones. Universities are very, very keen to have everything written down as processes, as procedures. There are ref rules, and the ref as the system of auditing quality of research has been around for a long time. The rules change, but the system itself has been well established. So it is possible to find out what those rules and what those expectations are. Then universities and business schools engage in a range of accreditation processes, such as business school ones, AACSB, AMBA, EQUIS, but also those broader ones like Athena, Swan, Race, Equality Charter, Stonewall. All of these things are specific, defined processes, procedures, initiatives, which when you enter the system, you might not know about. It's really well worth finding out about these things when you start your career or when you are at some stage in your career, because this has implications for how you can, I believe, position yourself within the organization, right? What we know as well is that business schools in the UK are highly internationalized in terms of both staff and student populations. This is, I think, really good news for those of us who were not born in Britain, who were able to come here and work in an environment where actually there are a lot of people around us who are also foreigners. Business schools are very diverse. There are women, men, people of color, people of different ethnicities. However, there are still inequalities. And those inequalities are very, very evident when you look through the hierarchies within university environments, and that includes business schools as well. And I think it's really, really important to bear that in mind when you're thinking about building your career, being realistic about what is happening and what you might experience, so that you know there are different experiences that you may have due to those different subtleties, nuances, inequalities as well. Intensity and pace of work is high throughout the entire year. Many universities these days also teach during the summer. There are January starts. The academic year cycle is not at all a one whereby we have a long, quiet summer and then some activity sort of in the autumn and spring. This is an intensive work. In fact, there is research that I'm sure some of you will have been aware of before that talks about the mental health poor mental health epidemic among academic staff. I'm very, very purposefully using those terms because I believe we do need to be speaking openly about things. It's part of removing that stigma from talking about mental health, especially now that it's becoming obvious that one of the really sad consequences of COVID is that mental health has deteriorated across the nation. That's why it is really important in the context of knowing what the environment is like, is to actually knowing who you are as well, what your motivations and values are, what your own aspirations and passions are, being aware of your own levels of energy, as well as the responsibilities that you have both within and outside your work. We are all different in that respect. It's very, very specifically different. One thing I think that we often do, at least I'm thinking of myself, when I was thinking about developing my career earlier on, some years ago, thinking, oh, so how is this person doing? Would I become maybe one day like this person or that person? How has their trajectory looked? The truth is, actually, everybody else is different. Their circumstances are different. Also, there are things that are important to them, which are less important to us. So let's not chase after somebody else's objectives. We need to really know who we are, what our own limitations are as human beings and as academics, but also what our passions are, what it is that we are able to do. So I'd say the first big thing about building a sustainable career is develop that awareness of the context itself, but also develop that awareness of yourself. And many of us actually, even sometimes when we think we're self-aware, there is a lot to be learned still about ourselves. So yes, now to break it up, I have got the sustainability check, and I also would like you to spend a moment to check your sustainability. Okay. So the first thing I thought about is look around you, as in around you, in terms of inside you maybe, and around those things that you are doing and striving for. Are your career goals achievable in the institution you currently work for? Yeah, this question assumes that we know what our career goals are and whether the place that we are at is one where we are likely to get these goals fulfilled. If not, then either we need to adapt our goals so that we are not constantly frustrated, or we may think of that this is a place that is good right now, but it's not going to be the place where we're going to work for a very long time. Then I thought for sustainability, because as I said before, we can't keep going at the same level of intensity and commitment long term. I think to think about how easy or difficult it's for you to fulfill all the commitments and demands placed on you on your time. I'm assuming we are all here, we are working as academics. Even if things are impossible, we will make them happen. So I have no doubt that we are all fulfilling the commitments and demands, but how easy or how difficult are we finding it? Do you have a mentor, especially if you are at that point in your career where well, everybody I think needs a mentor, regardless of the stage in their career. But sometimes it's more important to know that there is a mentor. And in what ways are they supporting you? Do you have one mentor? Do you have more than one mentor? What does it mean that they are a mentor? Are you able to always speak with them, ask them for advice? Do they actually present you with opportunities for the future? What are your relationships with colleagues and other peers like? Do you have good relationships with them? Do you have people around you who you find really difficult and challenging in your work, in your direct working environment? Again, conflicts are normal. Conflicts, struggles. Again, we want to make the world a better place. So of course we are strongly opinionated, and academia is a place where there are lots of strongly opinionated people with fragile egos. So relationships are not always perfect, but if we can't be at war all our professional life. So it's worth reflecting on, do you have good relationships with your colleagues and peers in general? Are there any specific barriers or challenges that you are encountering in your career? And here I thought it's really, really useful to think about those inequalities I mentioned before. Not everything is personal. There are structural inequalities. There are things that happen to us partly because we are women, partly because we are of certain ethnicities, partly because of other aspects of diversity that we don't actually have any influence on. Let's think about those. How rewarding do you find work? How rewarding? Is it really rewarding for you? Do you really have a sense of satisfaction? Or is it that you keep telling yourself that this is an important, worthwhile work? And then how stressful by contrast? Do you have a hobby outside work that engages you in a different way? Very different way. That's an interesting one, I think, because sometimes we don't have hobbies as academics. And how many times do academics say that, well, work is my hobby, this is my passion, I'm so lucky to be working. Have you heard people, maybe you are the person who says these things, oh, I'm so lucky because really I can do the thing I love and they actually pay me for it. Really? Is this the feeling you have every Monday morning? Or perhaps is it more complex? It's good to have a hobby outside work, and it's good to engage ourselves in different ways than how we are engaged at work. At work, now especially, we are at home, a completely sedentary lifestyle, staring at screens all the time. Do we actually have a hobby which requires us to go outside, spend time in nature, actually move our bodies rather than just sit? There is a lot to well-being. Do we have a satisfying family and social life? We can't choose our families. We can't. That's not the case. We can shape relationships with our family members, but not all of them depend on us. We have quite a lot of influence on our social lives and our friendship groups. What are the aspects of our work that keep us going no matter what? That's a very important one for sustainability. Rules, strategic plans, objectives change. These things come and go. We need to have, for a sustainable career, a certain core, something that will keep us going no matter what, so that we know this is important. This is a project that we are working on, a long-term intellectual, academic, socially important project. Are you able to take time off work in the evenings and on the weekends? Do you regularly go on holidays? All these things for sustainability and well-being are extremely important. We can miss out on a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Then if we want to live a long and happy life, we can't keep going like that. And with all of this, how satisfied are you with your working life and career progress? There is a lot to think about in terms of sustainability check. And I very deliberately decided to mix up these things so that we don't compartmentalize between work and non-work. One of the problems with work-life balance as a term, as you know, is that it kind of suggests that these two are somehow opposite or complementary, and doesn't take into account the fact that for so many of us, there is no distinction between the two. The boundaries are blurred, it's all fluid. So we really need to think more holistically about what we do, how we engage our minds, our souls, our bodies every day to build that sense of sustainability and well-being, regardless what's happening. Now, I hope it's getting you to do some thinking about where you are, where we all are. Here are some common challenges, and I have deliberately put them as these affirmative statements, again, to provoke reactions, provoke reflections. It doesn't mean that these are everybody's experiences. It doesn't mean that they do happen. You know, we could soften those statements. Sometimes there can be precarity. Sometimes something is not easily understood. But when we put them as statements, I think it's easier for us to actually figure out, is this something that we have experienced? Is this a challenge that we recognize? Because then we can work with it, okay? Takes a long time to understand the system. I believe so. I mentioned those things before, REV, all those strategies, all the different, the complexity of the UK university system. This is a challenge. This was a challenge for me. I know it's a challenge for many people. Employment contracts are precarious, can be precarious. Many of us start with part-time contracts, fixed-term contracts, wait for our contracts to become open or permanent. Requirements are not always clear, and requirements change, especially now during the pandemic. As we know, we are getting constantly very different advice and guidance as to what's going to happen, what we need to do. And workload is unpredictable, and it is difficult to stick to plans. Now, perhaps you're a person who thrives on change, but perhaps you're someone who likes a structure, who likes to plan, and who can find this very, very frustrating and unsettling. And again, it's not about today, tomorrow, in a week's time. It's about what's going to happen to you long term if you feel that you are trying to constantly meet expectations that are both high and not quite realistic. Now, meeting students' needs is a complex task, and that's another challenge. I remember being completely unprepared, and I'm not saying I'm better prepared now, I'm just more experienced to deal with some of the complex problems that students were coming to me with over the years. And the assumption was that because I know my discipline and because more or less I know how to teach, because I have a teaching qualification, I would be able to be also offering pastoral support and be meeting students' needs, which are often really very complex. And I think as early career researchers, especially, we are really unprepared for the kind of guidance we're expected to sometimes give to students from the start, just this being taken for granted. Now, mentors are scarce. That's another challenge. Not everybody is blessed with a mentor. Not everybody finds one very quickly. Mentors don't always, they don't grow on trees. It's difficult. These are relationships. Feedback on performance comes rarely. Usually, from experience, if somebody is doing all rightish, but there is nothing special, nobody will tell you. Nobody will tell you how to improve. You have to do something really, really bad in academia when it becomes a scandal, and this is when you find out you're not doing something very well. But feedback on performance in terms of regular conversations about how you could be doing things is not something to be taken for granted. Perhaps you have a line manager with whom you do this, who has done this with you, but that's not always the case. Another challenge is, of course, coworkers are not always reliable. People we teach with, people who manage us, people we write with, and also we are not always reliable because of life happening, because of all the demands on our time. And then we can feel both frustrated and guilty, and relationships are not that easy to maintain at work. Then we overwork ourselves, and work-life balance that I mentioned already can be difficult to achieve. Now, why is it all worth it though? Is it all worth it at all? And I think that, compared to that picture here with this woman juggling just two oranges and somehow managing, once you've juggled them all, there is an abundance. There is an abundance of things to think about, that there are lots of advantages of academic careers. We do still have a lot of autonomy in our work, even if we complain that this autonomy is being limited. Compared to many our jobs, we are much more autonomous. Compared to the precarity across the labor market, we still have relatively secure jobs in academia, especially in the UK, compared to some other countries. There are opportunities for promotion. We don't always have to be stuck in the same place, even though it might not be easy. But there are HRM policies. They are in the UK. The public sector has the highest standard of HRM policies across all organizations. They are clear. They are well structured. There is a legal framework against discrimination and exclusion. It doesn't mean discrimination and exclusion doesn't happen, but it is not legally allowed. In a period like this one, where the pandemic has really made it problematic for people to keep jobs or to be able to continue working, where people have been furloughed or made redundant, we actually, especially in the business school world, where we are not lab-based, we are not relying on rehearsals, we are actually able to work from home in a sector that has remained open throughout the pandemic. We are able to have this seminar today, maybe 6 or 7 months later than initially planned, but it is possible. We are able to do this, to turn up, to do this work. So we are really lucky cats, I think, in a sense. We are in an environment where professional development matters, where there is a lot of rewarding feeling to be gotten from working with students, because we can make a big and positive difference to other people's lives, both our students and colleagues. Work is intellectually stimulating. If you are the kind of person who appreciates that, this is a great environment. We are in this environment because we appreciate that. And there are lots of opportunities to work collaboratively with people, and some collaboration perhaps we don't always choose, but many we do. So we get this chance to meet people and work with people that we actually want to work with. So I think that it's really, really good to think about very specific tactics for building a sustainable career. These are tactics, and then about strategies as well to balance this act. I thought this kettle here represents both sustainability, because I think it's a well-used, well-worn kettle, but also it kind of balances there against this background of a blue bench and some nature behind. So that's how I think about the sustainability of an academic career. It is not glamorous, but I think there's something tranquil and beautiful about this picture. Now, the tactic would be, first of all, I think, is do engage in planning. Some of us engage in planning naturally, some of us less naturally, but really on a weekly basis. Think what your goals are going to be each week, so that you don't get constantly frazzled and frustrated that this needs to be done, that needs to be done, I'm behind. Try to plan out and try to keep some spare capacity in every day, because things always come up spontaneously. Block time for different types of activities. Some of us are quite good at these things, some of us are not. Turn off your email. Decide for yourself, over these next 2 hours, I'm not going to have my email turned on. And then you will see how your ability to concentrate improves, but also actually that you will feel less anxious, because this constant ping, it really drains our attention. Define your boundaries, external boundaries, meaning that other people you should know, first of all, whether and to what extent certain aspects of your schedule might be changeable and when not. For example, this morning I received an email from my dean of my business school asking me, would there be an opportunity to meet up with me on Wednesday or Thursday morning? Now, between us, actually, no. However, It doesn't always happen that I get an email from the dean saying, can we have a conversation tomorrow morning? So the answer is yes, of course, this is my availability, even though that time was blocked. So this is my external boundary. That time was blocked for a specific activity, which in this case right now I will need to move to time at the end of the day. Fortunately, it wasn't a meeting with anybody, but it was a specific goal I was meant to achieve. So these are the kind of external boundaries about in terms of what will be changeable in my schedule, then internally preparing myself for those situations and knowing how to respond to them. I'm somebody who likes planning. I'm not very flexible at all. It's things which come up suddenly can freak me out. So a lot of work has to be done in terms of internally understanding what my boundaries are, how I will respond to this unpredictability. Then it's good to keep track of how much of your time is spent on work, rest, and other activities. I don't know, do you do this? Ask yourself, do you do this? Do you know how much time you spend resting? How much is your are your sleep times regular, meal times regular, rest, hobby times, the time you spend with other people? There are some basic tools for assessing these things kind of in coaching settings, but it's really, really useful, really important to have a good idea of where your time goes. Now for the strategies, okay? Strategies. So first, have those career goals, set them, and regularly review them, even if it sounds extremely sort of, managerialism. Or this is, as you're managing yourself. Well, actually, it's good to know whether and where you would like your career to go, because then you can actually let yourself off the hook in some cases, adjust your direction, change your mind, adapt the goals. This having goals, regularly reviewing them, doesn't need to be a stressful or negative exercise at all. Positive for yourself, knowing what you want to do and checking whether you still want to do the thing you thought last year, 2 years ago, that was important to you. We change as people, our priorities change. So checking with yourself what it is you are trying to achieve is really important for your well-being. Having a long-term project, to me, it's very, very important. Whatever it is for you, know what you are about, who you are, what is important to you, what it is that you're trying to achieve in academic career. This is really important because, as I said before, the rules, the yardstick will change, the goalpost will change, whereas you will probably have to stay in this job for 40 years or longer, or however many years you stay. It's important for this to be a satisfying time. Another thing is to actually take time and effort to negotiate our workload. That's really important, I think, especially for early career researchers, for women. We don't always feel that we have a choice. Sometimes people tell us, oh, I'd like you to do this. And we thinking of myself, that's been very much my experience over this, no idea about the fact that it's possible to say, hang on a minute, can we please look into this? How many hours does it mean I will have in my workload? How does it compare to other people? How about if I do more hours on this module, fewer hours than on another one, etc., etc., etc. Take time and take effort, because the time and effort you take for this to start with, at the beginning of the academic year, for example, or at the end of the previous academic year, is well spent. You will then spend less time on other things in the coming year. Now, surround yourself with people who share your values, who inspire you, and who can support you. I deliberately don't call it networking. Think about the kind of world, all our worlds are, I don't know if you had this experience about, the bubble, the bubble we live in, not the bubble, the COVID support bubble, but the fact that with 6 billion people in the world, we really only have regular contact with not that many people. Are these people who share our values? Are these people who inspire you? Are these people who support you? Have such people around you. Some people you can't choose, but many of the people that you have contact with can choose, and this creates a very different world in which you live. This becomes our world. The 10 people, 20 people, maybe 5 people with whom we have contact on a weekly basis, they are really our everyday working world. So, and we have an influence on that world. Build positive working relationship. And at the same time, I think this is as important, or even more important sometimes, recognize early and avoid difficult working relationships. With some people, perhaps it's not going to happen. It's not ever going to be a good relationship. Make sure you are a good colleague, but with some co-authoring relationships, for example, are not going to work. It's important to recognize it early, to be clear about which relationships we go into, which relationships we stay in. I would definitely advise everybody to think very carefully about these things, because in academia, things take a long time. So some of these choices stay with us for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, even longer. And then focus on the positive aspects of your work. How often we, there is research that says in psychology that I think you need twice or 2.5 times as much positive reinforcement to counteract one negative thing. So if somebody needs to tell you 2.5 compliments, and if they just say one critical point, you probably won't hear those 2.5 compliments. We need a better ratio than that. So let's be aware of this. And I think, well, actually, if we get enough positive feedback, positive reinforcement, let's focus on that. Let's not ignore it. Let's not take it for granted. Because again, longer term, this is what keeps us going. So as points to take away, I'd like to say that I do believe that it is possible, although not necessarily straightforward, to build a sustainable academic career. And I believe that in business schools in the UK, we have particular opportunities for that. And we also have for certain specific challenges. I believe very strongly, and I'd like to encourage you to think about it this way, that the objective of building career is secondary to the real objective in life, which is to have a sense of well-being in life, to thrive in life, to be healthy, to live long, to be happy. This is really what life is about. And career has a lot to do with it. It can be both a positive influence towards that objective, but also negative influence, right? So we need to develop self-knowledge to understand what we require for our well-being and how career fits into this. That is when career can be sustainable. If we don't know what we require, then there is not much chance really to get that feeling. No matter how much we're chasing, we won't get there. It's worth reflecting on whether your current approach is sustainable in the longer term, current approach to your career. Again, let's not forget, it can happen to everybody. Everybody can burn out. Everybody can turn from a happy, joyful, energized person who thinks they can shoot a rocket into the moon into someone who's actually exhausted, drained, and cynical. But we all face certain common challenges. So it's good to identify those, talk to other people about them. And then there are really quite a down-to-earth, tangible, practical tactics and strategies that we can apply to our careers, to building them in a more sustainable way. There isn't everything. We don't have influence on everything. Let's not forget, it's not some kind of individualistic, a call to, take everything in your hands. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying, actually, there is a lot we can figure out about ourselves, about the world, about the environment, and we can influence. That's all from me.